You know what's interesting? Before I even start this video, I can tell you with complete certainty that a good majority of the people watching are not going to take any of these tips. They're going to listen to what I have to say, acknowledge that it may be good advice, and still not do it. But why is that? The reason is that a lot of the things that keep us up at night and prevent us from getting good, restful sleep are also very addictive, and they're linked to activities we don't realize we're addicted to, but still don't want to quit. And you've probably heard a lot of these tips before, and interestingly enough, in the past you probably haven't taken this advice either. But I want to reiterate some of the very common advice you hear about sleep, and why you should start implementing it into your sleep schedule, and what resistance there might be that's preventing you from doing this. And now the first piece of advice I can guarantee you've heard time and time again is that you shouldn't be on your phone right before you go to bed. Really any screens, you shouldn't be on any screens directly before going to bed. And there's a very simple reason for this. When you're constantly getting light from these screens into your eyes, it disrupts your circadian rhythm and tricks your brain into thinking that it's still daytime and that you shouldn't feel sleepy yet and that you have to be alert and still awake. And this is really such a quick fix. It's as simple as just an hour or two before bed, not being on your phone, not scrolling your phone, and it can really have such drastic differences in your sleep. And I think the reason a lot of people don't implement this step is because they're simply addicted to their technology. Think about it. If I told you that you could sleep for longer and get more restful sleep if you just weren't scrolling on your phone before bed, why wouldn't you implement that advice? Because a lot of us, without knowing it, are actually addicted to this technology. And I think a lot of people even like to convince themselves that this tip wouldn't actually work for them and that they're just different. So a lot of people might try this 1 or 2 nights, realize they're still not having the best sleep, and just decide, okay, this tip doesn't work in general, so I'm gonna keep scrolling Instagram or TikTok before I go to bed. It's really more related to your phone addiction than to the actual viability of this technique. As if you were to do this day after day after day, I can guarantee you would notice gradual increases in your sleep amount and also quality. But a lot of people just aren't willing to separate themselves from their phones for that long of a time, and they're really just addicted and compulsively want to go back to that habit of scrolling right before they go to bed. And throughout the video, if you can take anything away, this is probably going to be the most important piece of advice. Get off your phone before you go to bed. This is the simplest thing you can implement. It's so simple. You don't have to add anything to your daily habits. There's no crazy technique that you have to implement. It's quite literally as simple as not scrolling your phone before you go to bed. If you can do this, and I know it's going to be difficult because a lot of us are addicted to our phones and that dopamine hit we get from scrolling on our phones, if you can implement this, your sleep will increase drastically over time. And now, a second addiction-related activity that a lot of people aren't willing to quit, even at the expense of their sleep, is to stop drinking coffee so late into the day. A lot of people think that if they drink coffee, say 5 hours before they go to bed, they should be fine because they think the coffee is completely out of their system at that point. But one thing I just very recently realized is that when they're talking about the effects of coffee and how many hours it might keep you awake for, when they throw around numbers like 5 to 7 hours for the coffee to be out of your system, it doesn't actually mean that all the coffee has left your body after that time. That's simply the half-life of the caffeine in your body, or the amount of time it takes for half of that caffeine to be broken down and for its effects to stop. So say you have coffee at 4 in the afternoon. At 11 at night when you're trying to fall asleep, the coffee isn't gone from your body. There's still half of that caffeine left in your body, working, doing its thing, and potentially still keeping you up. So one thing I would recommend is that really you just cut out any coffee after around lunchtime. You know, if you want some coffee in the morning to wake you up, get the day moving, and just sort of get you out of that funk, then that's completely fine, but you should not be having coffee later in the day. And this is honestly something I struggle with myself, as I think caffeine is very addicting, especially if you like the taste and just how it makes you feel. Cutting that habit of drinking coffee later in the day is really amazing for your sleep. And again, like the last tip, I can guarantee this is a piece of advice that the majority of people watching are not going to take because they really just love how that hit of caffeine feels late in the afternoon, even at the expense of their sleep. But again, I encourage you to cut out this habit and just see over the course of maybe a week or two if your sleep quality is increasing at all. And if it is, maybe considering cutting this out of your diet in the long term. Now, the third and final tip that a lot of people aren't going to take because they are sort of addicted to this habit is that you have to stop doing anything besides sleeping in your bed. A lot of people, when they get home, they jump right into their bed and they start scrolling their phone, or maybe they do homework there. But the problem with this is that when we're doing these exciting, stimulating activities in our bed, we don't realize this, but unconsciously, we're associating in our brains the activity of being in bed and sleeping with this high arousal, exciting state. And most people wouldn't think twice about this, but the power of association in our brain is very, very strong. So if you're constantly doing exciting things in your bed, and then later in the day you finally have to go to bed and wind down and go to sleep, your brain's constantly associating this area, and maybe even your bedroom in general, with just exciting activities. So when you get into bed, without knowing it, your brain is sort of overactive and overexcited. So what this final piece of advice entails is that you should only be using your bed to actually sleep. You should not be studying or making exciting phone calls or playing video games in your bed. You should only use it for sleep. And again, I know this is difficult because your bed can be super comfortable, and sometimes you just don't want to get out of it. You just want to lie down there and just relax and unwind and do some activities that you really enjoy. But what I will say is that if you can cut out some of these activities in your bed and use it for a place of only sleeping, your brain is going to start associating your bed with relaxation and unwinding. And when it's actually time to get into bed and fall asleep, your brain's going to find it a lot easier to just fall right asleep, as opposed to harping on random exciting things throughout your day. And again, some people are so addicted to doing activities in their bed and getting that rush of just relaxation when they hop into their bed and start scrolling their phones, that a lot of people are going to try to convince themselves that this advice won't work for them. They'll think that, oh, the research is just nonsense, it doesn't matter, I'm different, it doesn't apply to me. But if you can sort of put your ego to the side and realize that this advice is supposed to work for everybody, psychologically there's a lot of research on this as it relates to insomnia and sleep deprivation, and if you can just understand that these results are very generalizable, and even though you might not want to give up these habits, that it can drastically increase your sleep quality, you'll be setting yourself up for much better and more restorative sleep. And I hope you can take some of this advice to heart, because the sleep we get is so important in our productivity and also just our motivation and our will to go out and attack the day and just really do things in general. When we're sleep deprived, we don't really feel like doing much, we feel sluggish, and this can really just affect our flow throughout the day and just make us less productive and less happy in general. So I think it's really productive that we start prioritizing sleep and thinking about different activities we can actually do throughout the day and right before bed to make our sleep better. And listen, if you're still watching right now, I really appreciate you watching until the end. If you like videos like this on studying, productivity, lifestyle hacks, health for college students, I really recommend you subscribe. There's going to be a whole lot more videos like this soon, but until then, I'll see you guys.